Today we're going to topic a question I have, and many of you have. How do you behave when you visit a friend's house? Do you fart? Do you burp? Is it appropriate time to do that? I mean, there's time and places to do that. Personally, if I had a visitor here and they fart and stink out my room, I would not like that. I would prefer to go to the washroom and do it, but I can't force someone. I just would prefer the polite thing to do is excuse yourself from the room if you feel it happening. I mean, it's natural bodily function. So today our topic is how to behave when going into social situations. Number one, if you're in a group of people and you have to break wind, I mean, not mostly people do that, but if it has to happen, would you leave the room and do it like in a quiet area, or would you do it in front of people? This is my question. Is it rude? Polite? No, it's not polite, but some people do it. Some people even burp. Another way to behave when out in social situations. Never raise your voice at people in social situations. Don't scream and shout in a social situation that could get into trouble. Personally, screaming at people on the street is inappropriate, and personally, I wouldn't like it if someone on the street screamed at me just because I walked by their house. I mean, it's a public street. I have a right to walk in the street. But this is the thing. Some people raise their voice. So maybe use indoor voice. That's appropriate. How to behave out in public. Do you use a knife and fork when you eat out in public, or your hands? Personally, I prefer to use a knife and fork. The polite way to eat in public is to use a knife and fork because most people around you use a knife and fork. Is it polite? Yes. Should you use a coaster if you're going to bring a drink and place it on the coffee table in someone's house? Yes. If they require you use a coaster, use a coaster. That's polite. That's another etiquette people do. Another etiquette as a guest in someone's house. Take your shoes off if they ask you politely to remove your shoes. Now, I know most people will expect you to take your shoes off as a guest in someone's house. The reason for that is you track mud and dirt all over the floor, and it's not appropriate. So, the polite thing to do is remove your shoes. Another way to act in social etiquette society or anywhere in society is how do you behave in public? Are you rowdy, loud, rude, obnoxious? Do you spit? Do you fart? Do you hork? This is the thing. If you're in a public bus or you're sitting in a station full of people and a big fart happens, what would you do? Would you politely excuse yourself? Would you leave the room and try not to stand near people when it happens? I mean, sometimes we can't help it and it happens. Try to leave the room if it happens. Another way to behave in public. Do you scream and shout in the theater? Do you act unruly and run all over the place when someone's trying to watch a movie? The answer would be no. It is appropriate to be quiet during the show because other people want to hear the movie. They don't want to hear a screaming person. Now, I don't think it's appropriate to bring a child to a movie theater unless you can control the child, but some people do that. But a movie that has a lot of violence, and in the media nowadays, people are kind of against showing children violent video games and movies, but they do it anyways. It's not a good idea. Another way to behave in public: do you share a seat when you're on a bus? Do you let the person sit next to you on the bus who comes on the bus? Would you give your seat to someone on the bus? Yes or no? It doesn't matter what kind of bus. It could be a school bus. Do you share your seat? Or do you block it for the other person because you have to share a seat on the bus? It's polite. When you're out in society, it's polite to share a seat on the bus. Now, if you go to a party and it says a dress up party, you have to dress up as a Halloween character or a spooky costume. Would you wear a costume? Yes or no? This is the question. Is it appropriate to come dressed up for Halloween if you're going to a Halloween dance that requires a spooky costume? Which I think is appropriate. It is most way of being civil in a group, and also you're showing respect to your team. Yes, I would do that. You don't want to argue over that. It's only a costume. There's a lot more things people can argue. That is my question of the day. If you have FAQs, send them to SashaElviraGamer@gmail.com, or you can send them to ElmaSasha3@outlook.com.